Today we have a special speaker on the Cyprus matter, Professor Edward Erickson, Professor of Military History, retired from the U.S. Marine Corps University. And welcome, Professor Ed Erickson.
Thank you, Gunay. It's a pleasure.
Well, our program, this is our 48th TASC TV program, and we have reached 4 million since April. And this is a very important topic for Turkish Americans and anyone who's interested in U.S.-Turkish relations. And about 60 years ago, the island of Cyprus was divided as the Greek Cypriot administration started to remove Turkish Cypriots from public offices, reduce their democratic rights and human rights. And then it just spiraled down to an ethnic conflict that, if it's not genocide, it's probably ethnic cleansing against Turkish Cypriots that went until around 1974 when the Turkish Republic intervened on the island. And that was around 46 years ago, July 20th. 46 years ago today, the Turkish Cypriots were celebrating their liberation, and that they were saved from being hamleted and massacred, saved from ethnic cleansing, and basically given the right to live due to the Turkish Republic's military intervention. That intervention is taught in U.S. American law schools as one of two military interventions in modern history that has actually protected, restored human rights and democracy. The second being the British intervention in the Falkland Islands against Argentina. So we'd like to, with you, Professor Erickson, discuss the months leading up to July 20, 1974, and then the days and weeks after the military intervention. You are an expert in military history and also the technical aspects of warfare. You have produced a book now that's made free to the public by the U.S. Armed Forces called Phase Line Attila. It goes into technical aspects of the amphibious operation by the Turkish Armed Forces. And so we're really looking forward to hearing from you, not only the political and the geostrategic developments that occurred with that intervention and what it means for the Turkish Cypriots and the Turkish Republic and the world. And we know Britain said, the intervention was legal under the London-Zurich Accords. Of course, Greece disagreed with that. But later a Greek court said that it was the Greek forces that were invading the island between 1960 and 1974, not the Turkish forces, that the Turkish forces were actually operating under the guarantorship to restore peace on that island. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll be fielding questions. And thank you again for participating today.
Gunay and Oya, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to the Turkish American audience. I'm in upstate New York right now, in my hometown of Norwich, New York. So that's why I'm no longer in DC and able to present in person. Gunay, if I talk too long, just cut me right off. First of all, this is the book right here, Phase Line Attila. And my co-author is my good friend and comrade in arms, the dean of the School of Business in Antalya University, the quite well-known Mesut Uyar. So we are very, very proud of this book. It exists in hard copy, and your taxpayer dollars. This is a United States government publication. I'll hold this up periodically. If you would like a hard copy of Phase Line Attila for free, your taxpayer dollars pay for this. Just send this email address, MCU with an / press at USMCU, United States Marine Corps University.edu, and they will send you a free copy. And I'm not pushing the book. There are 180 shopping days between now and Christmas. I don't make a penny on this book. This is a free U.S. government taxpayer funded edition. Okay, so let me start. And many of you know the story. Cyprus is an Ottoman island until 1878. It's then occupied by the British through World War I. It becomes a British colony in the 1930s. Up until 1960. And there are bitter struggles between the residents of Cyprus. 77% of them are ethnic Greek Cypriots. About 20% of them are ethnically Turkish Cypriots. The Turks are in a minority in a ratio of 4-1. So it's a tough road for them in Cyprus. And if you're as old as I am, you will remember back in the 1960s, the bitter intercommunal struggles and combats and assassinations and terrorism that are going on this island, to the extent where the United Nations sends in an observation force. In 1960, the countries of the United Kingdom, Greece, and Turkey, hosted by the United Nations, signed 2 treaties on the island, which one granted independence from Britain, but number 2 established it theoretically like a Swiss cantonment setup. It would be kind of a mini Switzerland. Switzerland is composed of German, French, and Italian and Slovene Swiss people, and they all get along. Well, people thought that model could be imposed on Cyprus. Unfortunately, it couldn't. There are 2 treaties. One, the Treaty of Guarantee, which in which three powers, the United Kingdom, Greece, and Turkey, agree to guarantee the political integrity of the island as an independent nation, not tied to another nation. The other is the Treaty of Alliance, which positions and allows the Turks to have a regiment on Cyprus and the Greeks to have a regiment on Cyprus, and the United Kingdom to have 2 large air bases, which they still have to this very day. So that brings us up to the mid-60s. And then there's problems on the island. The Turks, Gunay used the word hamlets. The historical community uses the word enclave. These are small little pieces of communities. The Turks, and I'm going to refer to them as Turkish Cypriots. The Turkish Cypriots are pushed off their land and compressed into these enclaves, which are a lot like the Warsaw Ghetto for Jews in 1941. I mean, they're tightly controlled. They can't get in or out without being hassled, and it's a problem. We didn't talk about the Johnson letter, but the United States basically becomes pro-Greek in the late 60s, early 70s. Starting in 1967, the Turkish military, during the middle of the Cold War, starts to become interested in the what ifs. What do we do about Cyprus? The Treaty of Guarantee says we've got to go in and help these people if we have to. So by 1970, March of 1970, it's reached the point where the Turkish military starts to actively make military plans to intervene on the island if the conditions required by the Treaty of Guarantee are activated. And we name plans: Operation Desert Storm, for example, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Overlord, the invasion of Normandy. Well, the Turks named them too, and this was called Operation Yildiz. Operation Star was the contingency plan to intervene on the island. And time goes on, and they make little adjustments. They change. They're going to, if they have to intervene, enter through Famagusta or Magosa, Gazi Magosa, as the Turks call it, and they change that to intervene in Girne or what the Greeks call Kyrenia. So as we go along, by 1974, there are 4 versions, 4 variants sequentially. So by the time we get to 1974, this is called Yildiz Atma 4, Star Drop 4, Star Version 4. And the Turks are ready. They've been preparing for years. This is a deliberate operation. And by deliberate, I mean they've got a force menu. They've got paratroopers ready. They've got Deniz Piyade, Turkish Marines, ready to go in what the United States military would call force packages. You can't have paratroopers, for example, without having the planes to drop them. So you got to have a force package. If you're going to drop a battalion of paratroopers, it's going to take 3 C-130s or 8 C-47s, for example. So they're working out the details constantly, and this is a contingency plan. So what that means is it's updated continuously, and it sits on a shelf in the plan shop of Turkish General Staff. And when they need it, they take it off the shelf and they open it up and they say, "Let's go." And that's pretty much what happens. The coup of July 15th, 1974, is the trigger for this event. A pro-Greek group of Cypriot army officers and Greek army officers have a coup d'etat on one day, on July 15th, 1974, and they remove the legal Cypriot government, which is composed of mostly Greek Cypriots and a few Turkish Cypriots. But it is a coup d'etat, and they install a former Greek or former Greek Cypriot military leader, a terrorist military leader named Nikos Sampson. Their objective is a political union with Greece. The objective of the Greek Cypriot military, quasi-military, and terrorist organizations is what they call Enosis, or union with Greece. So the coup occurs on the 15th of July by a group that seeks political union with Greece. So and in the same way Crete or Rhodes or the Greek islands are part of the Greek Republic, so too would Cyprus then join the Greek Republic. This is in absolute contravention to the Treaty of Guarantee. Can the Turks wait? The longer they wait, the more this becomes problematic and more difficult to execute interventions. So within a couple days, the government in Ankara decides we must intervene. The moment is upon us, and if we miss the opportunity, it won't come again. So 16, 17 July go along, 18 July comes along, and they make the decision to intervene. The military is poised and ready. They're kind of leaning forward, ready to do this. And within 2 days, they have marshaled the forces, the task list, it's called, and brought paratroopers to the airfield, brought the commando brigade from Bolu to the airfield, a different airfield. They got the Turkish Navy ready to go. They move fighter squadrons. They shift all their ground support aircraft that could attack targets on the ground to the east, while they shift their air superiority fighters to the west in case the Greeks intervene. It's necessary to have what we call air supremacy over the island, and necessary to have sea supremacy, maritime supremacy. You can't invade anywhere unless you control the air and the sea. And so the Turks make arrangements to do this. G-Day, Günü in Turkish, we would call it D-Day if you're familiar with Normandy. That operation is called D-Day. So on D-1 from England, troops are moving in ships toward Normandy. On D-Day, they invade. On D+1, they've got a foothold. On D+2, Eisenhower brings in more. So it's the same for the Turks. G-Day, Günü Day. On G-1, ships are moving. On G-Day itself, the intervention occurs. Turkish paratroopers are dropped in 2 drop zones, 2 battalions, down just north of Nicosia. Turkish commandos land at a disused airbase called Krine. And the Deniz Piyade, the Turkish Marines, invade the Pladini Beach, the 5-mile beach west of Girne, or Karinya as it's called. And this occurs like clockwork. This is enormously difficult to synchronize air, sea, and land forces. This looks easy. The military expression is briefs easy, executes hard. The plan looks easy. You look at the map and they got the big blue arrows and stuff, and it all looks so simple. And it's not. To have airplanes from several locations in Turkey rendezvous over drop zones and landing zones with helicopters coming from different airfields, simultaneously with ships coming from Mersin to land the Marines. It's not flawlessly executed, but boy, it's close. This is a uniquely successful first step in securing the island. It's, in retrospect today, how could the Turks lose? I mean, there's 60 million Turks in 1974, and there's 8 million Greeks. How could they possibly lose? Well, not that simple. And the reason is, and many of you have been to Cyprus, there's a mountain range on the northern face of the island called, the Greeks call it the Pendaklios Range, the Turks call it the Beshparmak. And it's tall and it's difficult terrain. So the operational problem for the Turks coming in is to create a lodgment, a cohesive area where they can control and bring in reinforcements. The problem is that the Marines, Denise Piade, come in on the north side of the mountain range. The paratroopers and the commandos are landing on the south side of the mountain range. And the mountain range in between is packed full of the Cypriot National Guard elite commandos. They are controlling the high ground. So this is problematic. It takes the Turks 2 days to kind of fight through and gain control of the mountain pass through the Beshparmak and to join the sea-landed forces with the air-landed forces and create what we call a lodgment. It's in retrospect, how could they lose? But if you go through it minute by minute, there are many, many, many opportunities for the Greek Cypriots to strike back with the forces at hand and to stop the Turks from joining forces. It's one of the mysteries of the campaign that we couldn't really uncover is why is the Greek Cypriot response so clumsy and so uncoordinated? They knew the Turks were coming. The minute that coup d'etat happened, Nikos Samson and the Cypriot National Guard commanders had to know the Turks were coming. It's undeniable. One of the problems with this particular book, and I'll take this moment here to put this up again. If you want the book for free, send your name and address. Use this email address. Tell them what you want. Faisal Attila. But one of the problems that Masoud and I had was that the archives of this operation, the Turkish military archives, are kept in an organization called ATESI, the Strategic and Archive Department of the General Staff in Ankara, and the records of this operation, the archives, the files, are still in unpacked boxes. So Masoud went there 4 or 5 years ago and said, "I'd like to see the archives, the records of the operation." They said they're not ready yet. We just have never unpacked them. So they're, to my understanding, they're still sitting in boxes in Atesi on Dikman Jadasa, which itself is named after a hill in Cyprus. So it kind of comes full circle. The operation is in 3 phases. The first phase is to establish this lodgment, a secure foothold on the island where you can then bring in reinforcements. And that takes 4 days. And by July 23rd, that's been accomplished. And then there's if you read the history of this, they call it the ceasefire. It ain't no ceasefire, Garfield. That's the problem with this thing. It's not a ceasefire. It's an operational pause. Both sides continue to fight through this. So while the world is looking on and thinking there's a ceasefire, there are a lot of firefights going on the margins where the Greek Cypriots are trying to hold the Turks in, and the Turks are trying to push out to establish a larger area. And this is the second phase, and it's really to secure a footprint on the island big enough where the Turks can then bring in major forces. We're talking army divisions, the complete 28th Infantry Division, the complete 39th Mechanized Division. So this goes on for quite a while, up until August 13th. So it's almost a 2-week period of fighting on the margins, if you will. Not intense battles, but smaller battles between the Greek Cypriots, who are reorganizing their forces and desperately trying to get the Greek Republic to intervene. This is a tough time for the Greeks, and there's a coup in Athens, and other people take over, and the Greek political military response just fails. So the Greek Cypriots are hoping for Greek intervention, which never occurs. By the end of August 13th, the Turks have adequate forces so they can push out, and there's a second major operation called Operation Victory, Zafer, which pushes the Turkish 6th Corps. This is now an entire Turkish Army Corps, 2 full divisions, 1 mechanized, one straight leg infantry division, an airborne brigade, a commando brigade, and Turkish Marine Regiment. This is a substantial force that they have marshaled and moved onto the island. That takes 2 days, and they push to the east to take and relieve the Turkish enclave, which is still fighting in Magosa, Gazi Magosa, or Famagusta. They push west and go all the way out to Larnaca, or not to Larnaca, but out past the end of the western side of the island, and this happens in 2 days. Why do they stop? Turkey doesn't want the whole island. Turkey is misunderstood in many ways, as even in 1974 is trying to recreate an empire. There's some significant thought in the United States that Turkey is trying to capture the whole island, that they want Cyprus. The Turks, from the very beginning, have never, from the beginning of the planning process in March 1970, through Operation Zafer and Operation Victory in August of 1974, they've drawn a line on the island. If you pull up a map of modern Cyprus, you'll see a line of demarcation called the Green Line. It's manned by United Nations forces, has been manned since the summer of '74 until today. It will indefinitely move into the future. But but the northern third of the island is now called the Turkish Republic of Cyprus, or words to that effect. The southern 2/3 is the Republic of Cyprus. That line, that green line, was the end of the operation. What defines success for the Turkish General Staff? What is the end state going into this on July 20th that the Turkish General Staff wanted to achieve? They wanted to move to that line. And these are called phase lines. And this is often in the literature today that's insufficient on this particular operation. You'll hear this erroneously called Operation Attila. That it was not Operation Attila. It was Atma. It was Yildiz Atma Dort, and then subsequently Zafer. But the phase line, Attila, is a line drawn by the Turkish General Staff that was the maximum extent of their advance. Why wouldn't you want the whole island? Well, the problem is if you occupy land like Israel does in the West Bank, or Turkey does in northern Syria, or any situation like that, you then inherit the people living there as an occupier and their international treaties on occupied land. So did Turkey want the whole island and then have a population of 80% Greek Cypriots to care for and abide by international treaties? And I can't document this. This is a best guess on my part, but Turkey didn't want that. They simply wanted to ensure the safety of the Turkish Cypriots, who were in dire jeopardy after the coup, of being further discriminated against or further oppressed, or in the worst case, killed and massacred. That was the fear in Ankara. So on the 16th of August, the Turks have what you would call war termination. They've successfully managed to achieve their end state, and they move up the phase line Attila. There are then negotiations in the United Nations, and both sides back off about maybe a mile, half a kilometer, 2 kilometers, and UN forces are inserted in between them, in between the Turks in the north and the Greek Cypriots in the south, and that becomes the Green Line, what's called the Green Line to today.
Professor Erickson,
yes.
had a question. In the Christmas of 1963, the massacres against the Turkish Cypriots begin. United Nations intervenes and puts in a United Nations border zone between Turks and Greek Cypriots. So Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots being supervised, protected perhaps by the United Nations. How would you rate the success of the United Nations peacekeeping forces in the 60s and then now past 74 to this date?
Yeah,
and I ask in somewhat of a context of Bosnia, where we look at Turkish Cypriots, Turkish Americans, and Turks. We look at what happened on Cyprus as a precursor to what happened in Bosnia and against Muslims, and the United Nations performance in Bosnia was pitiful. They actually watched the massacres occur, somewhat maybe even facilitated an easement for the hamleting and then the execution of hundreds of Bosnians. So in that context, I asked, in general, how would you rate United Nations peacekeeping forces, and how would you rate that in Cyprus?
Yeah. The poor United Nations. We use this word peacekeeping forces.
Right.
A better word is observation forces. In Cyprus, they any more than in Palestine or on the Gaza Strip after the '67 war, or in Kashmir. Partition is kind of a British thing, you know. Palestine is partitioned, and Ireland is partitioned, and British India is partitioned, and Cyprus is quasi-partitioned in '63 with these enclaves. United Nations observers go in to observe and report, but they are underarmed. They have personal weapons like pistols and rifles for personal protection, but they have no obligation to protect. The responsibility to protect that we talk a lot about today is non-existent, nor do they have the means. They can't protect anybody because they don't have the weapon systems or the number of people to do that. So the United Nations kind of takes a bad rap with this name, peacekeeping. The problem in Cyprus in 1963 that continues to 1974 is that the Turks aren't in one place. They aren't in just the northern part of the island. There's something like over 50 of these enclaves, and they range from tiny villages in the middle of nowhere to half the city of Gazimagosa or Famagusta or Larnaca or Nicosia. There are major Turk concentrations. So the enclaves can be as few as 30 or 40 Turkish Cypriots, or they can be as large as 30,000 Cypriots, and they're scattered all over the island. So the UN comes in and fans out to kind of just keep an eye on, observe and report is their mandate. So they don't have either the means or the obligation to try to keep these people apart from fighting. There are for every one Turkish Cypriot, there are 4 Greek Cypriots. So that's the fundamental dilemma of the Turkish Cypriot position, that we really can't defend ourselves. So they rely on the Treaty of Guarantee, and they understand that if it becomes too dangerous, that Turkey will intervene. And that's exactly what happens. Peacekeepers have always disappointed the world, because the world doesn't understand they're Turkish, French, and Italian peacekeepers in Lebanon right now, looking at the border between Israel and the part of Lebanon that's controlled by Hezbollah. And they, every now and then one gets killed, but all they can do is just pick up the radio and say they're fighting again, unfortunately.
So weapons maybe they're on their holsters to protect themselves while they're observing, basically. The Constitution of Cyprus, when we go back to 1959, envisioned and guaranteed equality between the two communities. It was a counter-majoritarian system, but nevertheless, the international community thought it was essential that the two communities be equal on the island. And that fell apart. Today, we look at a vision of a bicommunal, bizonal federation, and that plan also fell apart when in the Annan plan, the Greek Cypriots voted against reunification, and the Turkish Cypriots overwhelmingly voted in support of. The Greek Cypriot reaction to the Annan plan was severe. It was, I think, 75% voted against reunification. So now what? What do you think?
Yeah, now what? People ask me this all the time, not just on Cyprus, but on Turkey and the Middle East, and I'll give them an answer, and I'm always wrong. So I wouldn't pretend to be a futurist with any record of success. Let's go back to the Constitution issue. This is a kind of a key ingredient in why it fails. What unifies Bosnia today, Bosnia-Herzegovina, in 1995 after Dayton, in Cyprus in 1959, and in Iraq in 2006, is that these are not constitutions written by the people themselves. These are constitutions written by outsiders and imposed on the country. The Constitution for Bosnia-Herzegovina is written by the same people who write the Dayton Accord, the British and the Americans, and given to the Bosniaks, imposed on the Bosniaks. The Constitution for Cyprus is written by the guarantor powers, the UK, Britain, and Turkey, and imposed on Cyprus. The Iraqi Constitution of I'm going to say, I think it's 05, is written by 40 expats who come in to Iraq and under the leadership of the United States write a constitution for Iraq and imposed on the country. What is similar about all three constitutions is proportionality. For example, in Bosnia, there's a rotating presidency. There's a Bosniak, and then a Serb, and then a Herzegovinian guy. So you have three presidents that will rotate in sequence, and then the seats in the legislature in Bosnia are divided up by. Can you imagine in the United States if right now we said 60 senators of 100 are going to be Republican and 40 senators are going to be Democratic forever, and you fill those seats? That's what those assemblies and those legislatures look like in Bosnia, Cyprus, as it was in 1960, and Iraq. So in Cyprus, getting back to Cyprus, the president was elected, but then the vice president had to be of the opposite persuasion. Of the seats in the Cypriot legislature, X percentage roughly, and the Turks were overrepresented initially. They thought, well, 20% is not enough. So I can't remember the specifics, but something like 30% of the seats in the initial 1960 Cypriot Republic were guaranteed for Turkish Cypriots, and 70% guaranteed for Greeks. None of those legislatures, none of those constitutions have been particularly successful. I hate to use the word basket case today because the American constitutional system is arguably a basket case, doesn't work real well right now for a lot of reasons. But the parliament in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Cypriot parliament up until 1974, and the Iraqi parliament today had enormous difficulty forming governments under these proportionality-driven regulations embedded in the Constitution, given to them by outsiders. It just didn't work then. It doesn't work now. Iraq has enormous difficulty forming a government. So does Bosnia and Herzegovina. Probably the best thing that happened to Cyprus was the war. And to get back to the final question of what next, I don't see an end state. The last UN plan, Kofi Annan, I think, had it. I'm going to 6 or 7, 8 years ago. I'm losing track of time, but it was rejected by the Republic of Cyprus, by the Greek side of Cyprus. The Turkish side was willing to accept it. The Republic of Turkey was willing to accept it, and negotiations collapsed. I think the partition of Cyprus is permanent. That's Ed Erickson's personal view. I think it's permanent because of the disproportional representation on the island. You can't have 20% of the population be one ethnicity and language, and 80%, 77 to 80% be the other. It just doesn't work. We think in terms of a nation-state model. Ever since 1648, the Treaty of Westphalia, we Westerners try to impose a nation-state model on Iraq or Cyprus. Nation states are states that have cohesive populations. They speak the same language. They're generally of the same religious persuasion. They have the same culture. Japan is a nation state. Everybody in Japan is a Japanese, ethnically Japanese. So Cyprus, in my view, can't exist as a nation state. We throw around the Swiss model. Oh yeah, look at Switzerland, cantons, and it all works good. And I don't know why Switzerland works the way it does. It's a mystery to me. It's the aberration. Switzerland is not a governmental system that can be replicated. It's not something that you can impose and work. It is an aberration among the governmental systems that are functional on the planet today. So let me just end this with, I don't see a solution to Cyprus. I think the best thing for Cyprus is to formalize the petition. I don't think the Northern Cyprus, the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus can exist as a political entity. So if I were to predict something, I would predict the permanent petitioning of the island along the Green Line, and at some point, Northern Cyprus becoming a province of the Republic of Turkey.
Right.
That's kind of what I think.
So the next province, the way I see it is the imposition of plans, primarily by the West, has been the source of problems in the Middle East. I think Sykes-Picot comes to mind. Also, the defunct Treaty of Sèvres that was engineered for governing Turkey and hamletting Turks into the center of Anatolia and giving other parts of Turkey to other countries as far away as France and England and Italy. I think the grassroots response to imposition may be the most honest response. If the 70% wasn't good enough for the Greek Cypriots, they wanted more. And in the end, the partition occurred. And what comes to minds of Turkish Americans and Turkish Cypriots is if we can get little countries like Andorra and Liechtenstein and Luxembourg, and even more controversial places like East Timor, why not a Turkish Cypriot state?
Yeah.
So we have these questions for ourselves. Right now, I think the political will of the Turkish Cypriots is moving away from bicommunal, bizonal federation. The Greek Cypriot will is way far from that, and it has showed an interest to actually assume Turkish Cypriots as minorities, which Turkish Cypriots will not make that mistake again. So I think if we move away from bizonal, bicommunal, I think we have a good opportunity for a partition of two states. And I think that would be the proper and legal approach. Proper meaning Western and in the international community accepting a Turkish Cypriot state. But again, at a practical level, with how much the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus relies on Turkey, definitely I would think that would be the 83rd province of Turkey. One of the reasons, would you agree that the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus relies on Turkey is because it's embargoed? Can you imagine Cyprus makes it into the EU without the Turkish Cypriots, and the Greek Cypriots are in a way rewarded for saying no to the Annan plan. Turkish Cypriots are penalized despite having said yes to the Annan plan of reunification. Even cultural embargoes exist, such as soccer games. It's crazy. We think that's very anti-humanitarian. Would you agree that the embargoes push Northern Cyprus to be a part of Turkey?
Yeah, I think that, Northern Cyprus gets significant financial aid from Turkey itself, and it's a necessity because of the embargoes. Northern Cyprus is hard to get to. I mean, if you want to leave here and get to Northern Cyprus, about the only way you can go is to go to Turkey, and then fly in or take a ferry from Antalya or Mersin or someplace. You can't just, for example, go to Greece and then go to Turkey, or go to Italy and then go. I'm sorry, you can't just go to Greece and then somehow get to Northern Cyprus. You can't go to Italy and get to Northern Cyprus. So it's not only embargoed economically, but politically it's isolated. It's not recognized as a country by itself in the same way as the South. So it's not just the embargoes, but the deliberate political isolation of that part of the island makes it enormously difficult. It's not an easy thing to get into Northern Cyprus. It really isn't.
Well, as a Turkish American community, we did have the opportunity to bring Americans to Northern Cyprus through Turkey. There are direct Turkish Airlines flights to the Ercan Air Force
Airport, yeah.
and airport, which is a beautiful airport in Northern Cyprus. And when we did bring our friends from the United States, of course, we let them see a community that is resilient, the Turkish Cypriots doing their very best and keeping a very good attitude about it. And of course, we did go to the killing fields where the Turkish Cypriots were massacred in hamlets as the Greek Cypriot leadership rallied those massacres. And what echoes in the minds and hearts of the Turkish Cypriots is the Greek Cypriot leaders yelling and screaming, "There is no place on this island for anyone who does not constantly think and feel and speak Greek." Wow. If today the Greek Cypriots want Turkish Cypriots to be minorities, that is a very bad foundation to base the minority rights. And I think maybe the Greek Cypriots might want to look at the situation of Turks in Western Thrace. Some in the Greek government, which the Greek government still calls Turcophone Hellenic Muslims, Greeks that want to speak Turkish, basically.
Yeah, this is another. Linguistics are an obstacle. Neither community speaks the language of the other. In Iraq, after 2003, the Kurdish provinces, what's now called the Federate of Kurdistan, which was allowed under the constitution that we wrote for the Iraqis, they don't teach Arabic in the schools. So here's 20% of Iraq where the official language is Arabic and Kurdish. 20% of the people of Iraq today that are under the age of 30 don't speak Arabic. Now, how does that work? How do you, if you're a young Kurd and you're 30 years old and you go to the Iraqi parliament in Baghdad, you don't speak the language. I mean, these are substantive issues that just won't. They'll never go away. They won't go away.
They're practical issues.
Yes.
For self-governance and governance of nations. Before ending, Professor Eriksson wanted to share with you a book you already know because you wrote about the amphibious assault. It's called Bir Ada, Bir Dava, Bir Savaş. It's written by the commander of the amphibious assault, Neşet İkiz, and it is in English. And here's a picture of him, commander of the amphibious forces, and of course the amphibious forces themselves. Disclosure, he's my mother's cousin, my uncle, and appears on TV as well. We'll get him on TASC TV soon. We'd love to have you return and talk soldier to soldier about that.
I would enjoy that very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, please show us MCU
Marine Corps University, MCU
underscore
press with the underscore at Marine Corps University usmcu.com.edu. And you can, there are still hard copies available, and you'll be able to get your own hard copy. The maps are wonderful. I'm not only very proud of the book, which is an unknown story in the West, but the maps are you can easy to understand what happens in this operation.
Great.
Gunay, it's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed this. I can't tell you how much I enjoy connecting with the Turkish American community.
Yes. Well, you've connected with at the first airing of this, about 10,000 people, mostly not Turkish American, and then it will go up to about 1 million people viewing who are interested in this matter and who have a good faith approach to getting a resolution to that island. What we didn't talk about, which we can talk about next time, are the other interests that relate to the island: subcontinental shelf rights, for example, territorial waters,
yes,
airspace.
Yeah.
This is an island 40 miles off the coast of Turkey, and it is critical for Turkey. It's a Mediterranean coast access, and along Turkey's 1,000-mile southern coast, and it is also relating to subcontinental shelf resources. And I think eventually, if you would agree, that the countries of the Mediterranean, particularly the Eastern Mediterranean, are going to have to get together.
Yeah. I spent 2 years assigned to Naples, Italy, the NATO headquarters, and my job was, I was the special assistant to the commander-in-chief for the Eastern Mediterranean, and my job was to untangle the territorial air and sea issues that constantly came up between the armed forces of Turkey and the armed forces of Greece, and it goes all the way back to World War I and the island of Lemnos and the Treaty of Cyprus and the Treaty of Lausanne and the Mondros Convention, and it's a very difficult and thorny problem for both countries, and Greece and Turkey are always bickering about it. And what would I predict? Again, I'm not sure there's a resolution. I just don't. Libya makes it more complicated, and the gas and oil fields between Cyprus and Israel. It's so darn complicated. I don't know if we can have resolution. Where
there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, I hope so. You're more optimistic than I may be.
Diversifying reliance on energy is an important goal. May that be Russian, Central Asian, China, and countries of the Mediterranean, the people of the Mediterranean have so much more in common than they don't.
You're absolutely right.
So that's a huge factor of success. So thank you, Professor Erickson.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gunay. Oya, if you're still there, thank you as well.
Yeah, we thank our Secretary General Oya Bain. We thank our TASC IT team, young volunteers who have catapulted us into the next generation of grassroots democracy. And through the use of technology during COVID-19, I think we may even still continue this. This might be the most effective and productive way of reaching people in the future. We thank our viewers. Please continue to watch TASC TV. We will have our 49th program. I'll keep it a secret for now, but you're going to love it. All right, in the coming weeks. Be well all. Be safe. And be healthy.
Good. Same to you. Yep. Take care, Gunay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.